Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I'm featuring a discussion I had with Brandon Young of the Anti-Occult podcast on YouTube. So please go to his YouTube channel under Brandon Young, Y-O-U-N-G, and subscribe. This is only 1 hour of a 1 hour and 45-minute discussion, so you can check out the rest of our conversation on Brandon Young's YouTube channel, the Anti-Occult Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Anti-Occult Cast episode. Today we have a really interesting, one of my favorite anti-occultists and researchers and very interesting author, Willaim Ramsey, is with us tonight. I am flying Johnless. John Rasmus isn't here. John Evans isn't here as well. Something to do with the Lenten holiday, I think. But we do have Willaim Ramsey with me. I've been really looking forward to this show for a really long time. I'm a big fan of his work. You can follow him at occult911.com and occult911 on Twitter, and the great YouTube channel, I think it's Occult Event Investigations.
Yes.
It's under, William? Okay. And
yes,
so Occult Investigations on YouTube. There's some really interesting stuff on there, a lot of variety of topics. And if you just do a YouTube search, and you'll find a lot of really great interviews with him, and on Ed Opperman and on Visigoth and various outlets. Even I think Hagman and Hagman, he did a show up for Hagman and Hagman, which is pretty cool as well.
Just recently, actually, on Tuesday.
Was it Tuesday? Wow.
I did another one. My second one was Tuesday. So.
Yeah, so pretty busy, pretty in-demand speaker. And it's interesting because, maybe we'll start off with this, William. I don't know if you find this in the sort of alternative media research community, which I think is a horrible name. I think it should just be research community. But there seems to be two different sides of people, and they fall into extreme camps when it comes to Aleister Crowley. I should let the listeners know that you're the author of two books on Aleister Crowley, Children of the Beast, which is the one I've read, and then, 9/11...
Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11, and the New World Order.
Which is a fantastic book, too, about sort of the philosophy behind Aleister Crowley. And so there's always what I'm now calling the Rasmus test, named after my friend John Rasmus, which is you can always kind of dismiss somebody, well, not dismiss them, but tell whether somebody's a good researcher, an evil researcher, or someone interested in that by their reverence for Aleister Crowley, or lack thereof, And so when I asked, for example, you about, we'll get into this later, about Aleister Crowley's use of K versus magic, with the word magic, versus magic with just a C, and why he makes that differentiation, and is it pronounced Crowley or Crowley? You gave me a very clear answer, pointing me to the right direction. Just to give you a different example, someone like, I asked Peter Levenda, another researcher into Aleister Crowley, and he gave me a very obscure, meaningless answer that was just as cryptic as anything Aleister Crowley ever wrote. So that was the Rasmus test, I call. So there are people in this community who do good research sometimes, but then they see Crowley as some sort of misunderstood genius, or something like this. Or you have someone like Robert Anton Wilson, who takes his middle name from the founder of the Church of Satan and things like this, and thinks Aleister Crowley was a genius, or people like Michael Tsarion, or Thomas Sheridan, and people like this, And then there are other people who look at Crowley, or Crowley, however you want to say it, and know really what was that he was evil, essentially evil. Anybody that sacrifices any animals, innocent animals, or children, is an evil person in my eyes. And I don't think that's necessarily a Christian value. It has nothing to do with being a Christian. I mean, I didn't like Aleister Crowley before my conversion, you know. What's your thought on that, and what's your take on that?
Well, that's a good question. It's great to be on your show, Brandon. I'm glad to talk to you finally after just exchanging information for a while. But, you know, Crowley's a complex character, and I think certain people take certain things. I think the very sophisticated occultists know of his darker side, but they expurgate it from the public record.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding of the proper pronunciation of Crowley is that he rhymed it with holy in the poem Beetle. That's what I had sent to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when I first started researching Crowley, I said Crowley,
Mm-hmm.
and then I said Crowley, and now I really don't care because either way, people know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But I think properly Crowley, based upon what he would want. But I think the differential opinion is you're going to get it from different people. If you want to put Lavenda, Sarian, and Sheridan into a pro-Crowley camp, you probably can put them into the camp of people who are very familiar with the occult. Lavenda was actually seen in an OTO ritual on like the History Channel or Discovery or something like that.
Right.
There's a recent discovery about him, and he is Simon from the Necronomicon. It's a book that is probably one of the primary introductory books into Satanism in the occult. He actually has his name on.
Well,
my understanding is that I've seen his name on a department in the Department of Copyright for the U.S. He has his name on there as the author of the Necronomicon. So
yes,
you know, getting a straight answer from some of these guys who are into the occult, which means hidden, you know, they're going to intentionally hide things about Crowley. If you go back, you know, when I tried to get a proper understanding of Aleister Crowley, I didn't just read his biographies. I went to the source material and looked at it for myself to see what he actually said, wrote, and what was in the public record. Because there's probably things in the private record of the OTO that public will never see perhaps until they get initiated. And you know, if you listen to Lavenda, some recent stuff, he talks about initiation before discovery, which I'm against. I'm definitely in your group of the anti-occultists. I expose everything and let people see it. So when I was exposed to all of his original source documents, then I realized, well, this is a very evil person. He actually was a terrible influence on even his followers. He was supposed to educate. His followers would end up insane, committed suicide, dead. And the corpus of his text and what he left, I think, encourages people, against, for me as a Christian, away from the truth in the light of the world, Jesus Christ. I think that he intentionally kept that away. And then you read his writings, you understand his magical system, and read Liber 77, which is man is God. You can do whatever you want, and whoever thwarts those rights, you can kill. Liber 66 is about sacrifice, human sacrifice. Talks about the blood of a child will cover an altar as of wine, and it promotes to people, you know, you will be a secret evil to the world. So it provides that promise to people who like Crowley. And then the world's tragedy, which is incredibly blasphemous. Crowley identified himself with the beast in the Revelations, who will utter blasphemies. And the world's tragedy is probably the most blasphemous book that I've ever read in relation to Christianity. The world's tragedy for Crowley was Jesus Christ, and he saw himself as an antithesis of that. So, my opinion, I think, of Crowley comes from my Christian perspective, and I think that other people's opinion of Crowley comes from an initiated perspective, I would say. Right. I mean, I can't confirm the totality of these guys' initiation, but,
you
know, it's like a duck, acts like a duck for me. They've been initiated one way or another.
Yeah, I agree. And just to go back to Lavenda, because I was definitely going to bring that up, is that, you know, this is how I came to know Peter Lavenda. Let's start maybe 15 years ago. My brother was doing restorative work on my grandfather's photographs and all kinds of photographs that he discovered of my grandparents and granduncles and all my family relations. These were really old photographs that he restored and printed out really nicely. He would go pixel by pixel in restoring these things, and he put them up on Flickr. And he said that different authors were interested in him. And I really didn't care at that point. I wasn't really into anything like that. And then years go by. And I started taking a class in H.P. Lovecraft. There was a course at Mythgard University about H.P. Lovecraft taught by Dr. Andy Sturgis. So we were going over the literature of Lovecraft. And I knew Lovecraft was influential in a lot of different ways, magical systems and so forth and so on. So I looked up a book to get, and one of the more interesting books I saw, which tied sort of occultism and the OTO, Crowley, Kenneth Grant, and people like this together, was a book called The Dark Lord. And this would be Peter Levenda's recent work. I think it came out maybe 2013. So I didn't get into this till fairly late. And I read that, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty far out. This guy's connecting Crowley to H.P. Lovecraft, to ancient Sumerian myth, to Voodoo, to Kenneth Grant's Typhonian trilogies, and seems to know a lot about occultism, and magical esoteric practices. And so I said, well, that's interesting. And then I heard there was a thing called the Simon Necronomicon that had been in publication since 1980. And I came across it. And I came across... My teacher never referred to it. She said, it's funny that the Lovecraft scholars sort of dismissed that book. They say it's gibberish. But it had a huge history and influence. That book was compiled together by people at the Magical Child Bookshop in New York City. And they were sitting... What's that?
Well, the guy who ran it, his name was Herman Slater.
Thank you. Yes, and there's like an A.J. Wasserman also, too, with the OTOs. A lot of people are hanging out there. A guy named Chris Claremont, who Levenda shares a wife with. He is the founder of the X-Men, which is the X and the zero, or the X and the O is the mark of the beast. And you have a lot of occult symbolism in those movies and in that comic franchise. I mean, it's Kabbalah and and everything. So all these people are hanging out there, and they said, hey, Lovecraft used to live up in Red Hook, or right up the street, and they came together and said, wouldn't it be an interesting idea if we all got together and sort of said, hey, we found the real Necronomicon, it really exists. And they did it, and they published it, and it's still in print to this day. And what it is just... so I found out... So I'm thinking to myself, who in the world has the knowledge of somebody capable to write a non-fiction book called The Dark Lord, which combines Kenneth Grant, Sumerian legend, Aleister Crowley, and H.P. Lovecraft, all woven in together, and the Necronomicon. It's really... preponderance of the evidence says that it's probably Levenda.
Levenda, yeah. I mean, other people have said it's Levenda as well.
Mm-hmm.
This guy Alan Cable, C-A-B-A-L,
mm-hmm.
who was another occultist, said that it was him, and that Levenda's well studied and versed in the occult. I think Levenda even worked at the Magical Child at one point.
Right, yeah. And there's a big... So I did a little bit of research, and I came across a coast-to-coast interview, I think from the late 90s, I want to say, where they actually were going to interview Simon, and his voice had to be disguised and everything like this. And of course, what happened was somebody changed the slowing down function of it, and so they sped up the voice of the host. I forget who it was at the time. It wasn't Art Bell. But it was coast to coast, and it's clearly Levenda putting on a Slavic accent, So here's somebody who's a hoaxer, and he prides himself in that. He prides himself in having this snuck into RFK's funeral at St. Patrick's Cathedral and things like this. And
strange connections too, like the Wandering Bishops.
Yeah.
And stuff. The hidden secret secret forces or hidden forces? The Sinister Forces
yeah.
Has all kinds of asides and inside information. It's really a book written by somebody who is acquainted with a lot of underground figures and understand knowledge.
Yeah. I like the process, from the Process Church to Manson. I mean, yeah, I've read part of those books, but the interesting thing is he wrote, part of that book is about a famous seance that my family was at, happened to be at. So that's why he was interested in the photo.
Which seance was that?
That's the 9.
The 9, right?
It's called the 9. Yeah, I haven't really looked too much into it. I just, in my family, it's kind of myth and legend. I just knew that, my...
Didn't it happen in upstate New York or something like that?
Maine, I think it might have been the cabin in Maine.
I don't know. I'm not too familiar with
Yeah, me either. I haven't really researched, but a lot of people... But from that, he basically ties it somehow to the Kennedy assassination or whatever, but... and I don't know if I know the Kennedys. I've met the Kennedys, and that's a great embarrassment to me and my family to have us sort of connected to that, which is a really...
Why is that?
Oh, because I know them, and I don't want to be, I don't want them to ever, hear about it. You know what I mean?
Oh, gotcha.
And
the 9 actually pop up all over the place. These 9 entities that run the world. There was, I think, in Holy Mountain in Jodorowsky's movie, he talks about 9. And there were actually, believe it or not, Esalen, where people like Robert Anton Wilson would give speeches, and Timothy Leary, the guys who started it ran in and communicated with extra dimensional beings called the 9.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. So that whole Esalen thing is centered around this kind of weird spiritualism that overlays and overlaps with a variety of different people. And 9 is the very powerful number in numerology. It's the last number before the numbers start repeating themselves,
Right.
So it has like a symbolic meaning.
Right. And I know John Lennon was sort of obsessed with the number 9 and all that sort of thing. So I've looked into it a little bit. It's like a repeating number, and it has all these different mathematical attributes that
3 times 3, all these things.
Right, and then it can reduce back. Everything reduces back to 9. And, if you add 1 to everything, I don't know. I forget exactly everything about it, but yeah, that's interesting. And there's a thing too called Order of the 9 Angles.
Right.
And
you'll see that symbol on Jodorowsky's one of his movies. He has that 9 angle. It's supposed to be a heavy duty secret society.
Interesting. I've watched El Topo and Holy Mountain, of course, which kind of blew my mind. But what's interesting about that is that's an Alan Klein production, and I don't know if you know that Alan Klein is.
That goes back to Lenin. If you read Children of the Beast, Lenin was the one who put the money up to, make. I think either one of those first.
Holy Mountain. Yep, absolutely, and also Mick Jagger. And people like that, and so Lavenda, like I say, is just I think he, like I recently saw, he came out with a book called the Secament Theory or something, or Machines or something like this, and this is hugely funded thing by Tom DeLonge, who is a musician from Blink-182, and I guess their names came up with the Podesta WikiLeaks emails and things like this.
Have you seen the picture of DeLonge, Lavenda, and Podesta together?
That's right. Yes, that really is creepy, and
super creepy. See, I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I would probably say with pretty much confidence that Lavenda is an OTO member, or was, or had some affiliation with it. Mm-hmm. He's done an interview for the OTO, their actual official website. So I've actually heard that, but interesting thing is that in the Podesta emails that were leaked, not hacked, there's a reference to Thelema, Crowley's kind of word of will, and there are other strange references to magic. Podesta was doing some kind of ritual in a dungeon on the second full moon of a month, which in moon magic is like a supremely powerful night to do rituals. And and then you throw in everybody knows the spirit cooking and the witch, Abramovich. Right. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Podesta is an occultist and, more than likely an occultist and affiliated with one of these heavy-duty secret societies, OTO perhaps.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting that not too many people talk about, William, is before Podesta emails got leaked and everything, I was suspicious of the guy. because everybody, I would listen to Richard Hoagland's show, and I think every week he had this guest on there who was some sort of DC insider, lobbyist guy for, I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Stephen Greer and the quote-unquote Disclosure Project. Okay. So they're pretty powerful. They've got a lot of money behind them. They were one of the first organizations. It's kind of like a very cult-like group. Stephen Greer says that he takes people on field trips, very costly ones, where he goes out in the deserts and summons UFOs, supposedly, just at like the end of Lucifer Rising or something like this, right?
Right.
So,
right. One of the clients is Greer, huh?
Well, here's the I think so, because one of Greer's associates would go on Richard Hoagland's show and say, listen, we got people working behind the scenes, leaking this story about, this is why, and by the way, this is why they said, if you want disclosure, you have to vote Hillary Clinton, because she gave some sort of remark in a small town newspaper up in Lincoln, New Hampshire, about some kind of alien thing, and anything like that, they say, haha, see, if you vote for her, you're going to get disclosure. So there was a concerted effort, I think. And if you look at Podesta's Twitter, he would, when the new X-Files season came out, he would say, hey, the truth is out there, hashtag, and things like this. And he was very much, people thought, he was sort of the disclosure man that they would lobby. And that's why I think you saw Podesta with one of the reasons. I think they're probably, like you say, secret society media reasons and things like this, why Lavender was there. But with Tom DeLonge, it's just that they're lobbying. They're clearly lobbying to get some sort of, I think, disinformation. Because the way I see it, William, is that, and you probably know about LOM, who was the entity that Crowley channeled or whatever, who looks just like the modern extraterrestrial, but I think that's a demon. I think extraterrestrials, if they exist, are essentially demonic.
Extra-dimensional.
Right. I mean, I just think, I don't know. Yeah, the experience.
Not alone. I mean, I include in Children of the Beast this conversation that took place between Robert Anton Wilson, Grady McMurtry, who was a disciple of Crowley, and Jacques Vallée, who's always said that these beings are extra-dimensional, And I tend to believe it. I think that that's it. And Crowley himself said, in the future, these creatures will be redefined, So I think that this is possibly something going on with that redefinition of this entity that Crowley invoked. And if you read through all of Crowley's work, he's constantly talking or invoking extra-dimensional beings, not things from outer space.
Right.
Rarely he talks about anything having to do with outer space. It's always cracking through the dimensions. Whether he was talking to Iwas, there was another one called the Magician,
Holy Guardian Angel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what's interesting to me, I don't know if you've, John Rasmus and I have looked into this a bit, is that we find that a lot of demonic or extra-dimensional things or phenomena happen in corners. So when Crowley describes the Holy Guardian Angel, he describes it coming from the corner of a room. And I think it had like a British accent or something like this. So he's saying that the demon kind of trying to trick him, went through all those hoops to try to trick him into thinking that it was a part of his psyche. Like, because if you talk to some atheists and things like this, they think, oh, demons. I mean, there are a lot of, interestingly enough, like Satanists who are somehow atheists, which makes absolutely no sense to me, right? But that's essentially what base Satanism was it was pretty much atheist, that this was just sort of psychological or extensions of your unconscious or something like this. So it's all very weird, but somebody who, the Necronomicon, going back to that for a bit, the Simon Necronomicon, and now Lavender wrote it, and as you point out, the evidence is there. I think it's on the registry of a copywriter. He has his name, right there. It's kind of the smoking gun. And there's a really good article on this I could link into when I upload this. on this, and interestingly enough, it's an old article, but it's called "Conspiracy Cooking." But moving on from that, now in Children of the Beast, I mean, wow, I mean, unbelievable how much of an effect, and I didn't know until very recently how huge in all aspects of life, from things we watch on TV, which I think is the externalization of the hierarchy, where you're watching reality shows where it's 5-year-olds dancing and putting on makeup as like, dance moms and things like that, and it, as the sexualization of children, I would call it, and all these pop stars who are young but very sexualized and things like this. This is, I think, some sort of must be from the wake, I would call it, of Aleister Crowley, because you could, as you point out, like you connect the things that are going on in the Crowley right up to Hollywood today, and I don't know, like through Kenneth Anger and all those influential people. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's just like I think that a lot of people carried that torch of Crowley. They thought that they saw that aspect of Crowley, that he was some kind of liberator of humanity and educator. Right. And it's almost kind of like how the 19th century occultists talked about Prometheus, this kind of light bringer person who liberated humanity. His admirers talking in terms of like that about Crowley. So whether it's Leary, Kenneth Anger, and some of these other luminaries that are around, and Lon Milo Duquette, probably, some of these other people. But Caesarion, for sure, really admires Solomon. He's an awesome person. So, and I think that they look back to his promise, what he promised the people is like liberation from constraints, a new set of knowledge, a organization where you can advance up these grades, so you get this kind of feeling of you're in a secret society. Well, you are in a secret society, but you're learning this kind of secret knowledge, and then I think that's like what Crowley promises, drugs and sex too, so that you wouldn't have any restraints. And if you kind of read through what Lavenda was talking about and all these other people, that seems to be the real truth, is these guys are practicing magic, they're druggies, and they're libertines. So
right.
That's the Crowley's promise to all the way up until 2017 is, this kind of deification of the self. God is man, man is God. I mean, so. Yeah, and it's really a remarkable trace of how many people went back to Crowley, and I think that they go back to Crowleyanity, this version for cultural and cultural kind of growth, kind of musical and cultural power for inspiration for their movies and their music and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I even see it. I was friends with Sean Lennon. And we met before. We did a concert up in Western Mass a few times, and we got to hang out. But when he came out recently with his, or maybe it was last year or 2 years ago by now, with his
Animals, or what was it?
Animals video. Yeah, it was the first video. I was trying to think of the album, but the Animals video. He admits that he is emulating Crowley, and that that video is shot on a compound that was something like it's a still existing sort of Manson compound. That
in Los Angeles, right?
Right, or north of Los Angeles, and a little bit. And the person who runs it, still alive, kind of looks like Aleister Crowley in the video. His name is Father Yod. And this Father Yod supposedly there's a documentary, I think, on Netflix about him. There was some documentary about him.
Source Family.
Thank you. Yes. So he was part of it. So they shot that video there. And Sean Lennon, even during an interview, says, I'm thinking about becoming a Scientologist now, And so, oh, wow. So there's the connection, that, you see how people these days, because they see, I think, people who rebel against God, they always are going to sort of emphasize with the rebel, you know, because and you see this with all these Crowley worshippers, is that they essentially, like, you know, like with Milton, Lucifer, you know, Milton made Lucifer to be more sexy than God or something like that in Paradise Lost. Speaking of Paradise Lost, that was the title. That was a nice little segue there. I think, wasn't it, to the original HBO documentary?
Yes.
On the West Memphis 3, which I just want to tell my little story about that real quick. And I saw that a long time ago when it first came out, when I was, you know, a kid, or whenever it came out. And, you know, I thought, okay, you know, but something still wasn't right about that documentary. I recently, well, not too recently, maybe a year ago, saw it again, and I said, oh my goodness, how could anybody fall for this? I mean, it was something like, there was that Netflix series about a murderer, Making of a Murderer, which it still left that sort of feeling like, ooh, somebody got away with something, you know? And you can see it. You can see how they focused on Damien Echols as sort of like a brooding, rebellious sort of teen, and then all of a sudden the LA lawyers are there, you know, and they're appealing, and all this money comes into it. And then you look at what you've done is look at where the money has come from. And really, I was sad, Willaim, because it comes from Peter Jackson, who directed the Lord of the Rings films, which I loved, you know, but unfortunately...
people share that occult tattoo.
Yes!
Sort of vigil in it with the Stephen alphabet and
yeah. And Johnny Depp as well, and then you have...
tattoos as well.
Yep, Henry Rollins, and then, of course, I've been researching Henry Rollins, and he mentions this a lot, because he does these sort of speaking dates now, where he'll just speak for 2 hours straight, and he talks about how he was raising money for the West Memphis 3. Maybe I'll have to send you this clip when I go back and find it, but...
I have it. I have a clip
sure
of him talking about the money raising on my YouTube channel.
Yes.
Investigations of William Ramsey Investigates. You can see him talking. He says, man, Eddie Vedder wrote these huge checks. So these celebrities wrote big number checks to pay for good attorneys, excellent attorneys, really, and excellent PR firms.
Yeah, and it's just, it's amazing. It's just, you've done absolutely amazing work on that. Because Henry Rollins himself, I mean, his roommate died under very...
was Joe... What was his name? Joe...
Oh, Joe something. Yeah. But his father was really upset and even blamed Henry.
He admits on a Howard Stern show that the dad thinks that he did it. The dad thinks Henry Rollins did it, which when I saw that, I was like, what? Because I know that all these people surrounding Echols and involved in the West Memphis 3 case are sketchy.
Yes.
And they have really strange history, whether it's Depp or
Satanism.
Margaret Cho, yeah, all of them. And so when I came up with Rollins, then I researched it, and the dad thought he was guilty. And then Rollins says to Howard Stern, I can always countersue or something. One of the interesting things about that interview is he admits that the amount of money that he got was $11,000 exactly for some book.
Really?
Yeah, when 11s pop up, it's like, what?
Yeah.
So, are you signaling something? Is this an occult signaling? I don't know that much about Rollins, but he has that black sun tattoo.
Yes.
That got a black sun tattoo on his back, this huge tattoo. Right. That rumor is that Depp and Marilyn Manson both have that tattoo. They just don't take their shirts off.
Right. Yes, and I know for a fact that Manson and Depp hung out one New Year's Eve. I think it was, or maybe it was during December 21st, 2012, or something like that. And so they're definitely friends. And I know Depp has played at guitar at Marilyn Manson's concerts and things like that. But Manson,
I think Rollins and Manson were both on Sons of Anarchy. Is that correct?
Oh, I think Rollins definitely. I haven't seen Manson on there. I didn't get
Manson
past the third
on
season.
The last one, I think he was a criminal. But it's interesting. These guys all intertwine, And Manson, if you go to my YouTube channel, you can hear Manson talking about the West Memphis 3, and he's actually kind of mind controlling the public. He repeats things 3 times. These guys were unjustly injured. They were unjustly arrested. They were unjustly arrested. Unjustly arrested. Mm. So it's like he's repeating this knowingly to convince the public. So, yeah, and that move. I mean, Sons of Anarchy. You go through it, and there's tons of occult stuff in there. The Raven pops up. These guys have all kinds of tattoos. One guy has there's this murderer in there named Smiley who has smiley face tattoos for every person he's killed.
Huh. You know, let's go there for a second, because I think some of the best research that you've done that nobody else is really doing is on exactly that. This thing with the smiley face and the smiley face killers. What you've basically, you and a couple other people, I guess.
I'm not the first one. I mean, the first guys were these two guys, Gannon and Gilbertson, wrote case studies in drowning forensics, noticed a pattern.
Yeah,
but it's a kind of vague pattern because it's happening in different parts of the country. So it's not a cluster of like murders that would all happen in New York. Mm-hmm. It happens in LaSalle, Wisconsin, New York City, Ohio, Pittsburgh. They just actually on Monday, a guy turned up. His name was Dakota James. He disappeared January 25th. He was 23 years old. He fit the profile, and he was just found in water in the Ohio River downstream from Pittsburgh this past Monday, so 4 days ago. He was disappeared for 40 days. They couldn't find any trace of him. He was last seen in downtown Pittsburgh texting using Grindr, the kind of gay dating app. And if the water isn't frozen, if a human body goes into water, they will come to the surface just by the natural process of decay. They will come to the surface at the latest 20 days from the day they went into water.
Right.
So he popped up 40 days after he disappeared, 39. So where was Dakota James?
Right. And I mean, there's definitely a pattern going on.
That's actually the same kind of MO for a lot of these crimes. These guys disappear. They're missing for a while. Mm-hmm. They don't find them right away. And they actually find them in places that were just searched. Dakota James was found in the Ohio in a place called Robinson Township by Neville Island. It was actually a slower part of the Ohio River that had just been checked over the weekend. So it had just been checked Saturday and Sunday. Why didn't they find it? How did he turn up there?
And, you know,
so I mean, and you see the symbol. The reason it got the smiley face killer symbol is because people noticed that there were these smiley faces close to where some of these bodies were found. Strange, symbols. And nobody really knew what they meant. Some researchers have discounted them. I have not.
Right. And I mean, well, the thing is that they show up in what I would call black magician culture. For example, Alan Moore, the black magician who sees himself right in line with John Dee and all these other black magicians of England. It's a specifically English magical tradition he comes out of, where in the Watchmen, as you know, there's the smiley face with blood coming out of it, and then there's the comedian. Now, I recently read a comic book, a Batman comic book. I forget the name. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, by Alan Moore.
Well, no. Well, not just the Killing Joke. Well, there's part of it, but there's a different one where Batman is looking at the card that the Joker gave him, and it's 3 different Jokers. Okay, and he kind of takes it off, and behind this poster or this card that's been up on his wall forever is the smiley face Bob. And so the comedian. Take a picture of that and send it to me? Yeah, I'll find it on the com. Absolutely, you got it. But the implication, the theory, is that the comedian of The Watchmen, the character of the comedian from The Watchmen, who's a really terrible guy, he really is he's kind of like a trickster, very much like the Joker. But he uses violence, kills indiscriminately for the love of it. He's a very tortured individual. Anyway, it all fits in to the smiley face stuff that just keeps popping up in Stranger Things. It's popping up in Doctor Who.
But really, the climactic moment in
Yes.
episode 8. The smiley face pops up when this creature from the other world, the Demogorgon,
Right.
which is actually a demon. I mean, if you actually look up what Demogorgon means, it's like a prince of demons.
Right.
Pops up. There's the smiley face.
Yep.
And if you go through and look through this whole statement about what I'm trying to look it up, but I have it right here.
Mm-hmm.
The statement of what the comedian says, he's like killing people and he doesn't care. And then right before he's killed at the beginning of Watchmen, he repeats what I think is a very important line that encapsulates the meaning of the smiley face, which is, it's all just a big joke.
Exactly. Exactly.
The whole of humanity, not humanity, but the cosmos is one big joke, so
Right.
nothing really matters. The implications of that statement and that position is that
Do what thou wilt.
do what you want. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It leads right to there. Do what you want. It's all a big joke. There's no
Right.
meaning. There's not a meaning.
It's almost like Jean-Paul Sartre and existentialism, and where, good and evil don't really exist. It's all a big joke anyway. And, well, here's the thing, though, is where I'm going with the clown thing, is that maybe this kind of coincides with the creepy clown phenomenon that happened last year. Remember, there were these creepy clowns that were popping up and made the news quite regularly of these terrible creepy clowns. So I don't know. There might be a connection there.
I do think illuminated ideas or Discordian ideas are being jonesed mimetically into the mass media intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
So you see this whole idea of Keck, this kind of Lord of Chaos, was integrated into the kind of alt-right, if you want to call it that, push for Donald Trump's victory.
Right.
They had that around, and they didn't really ever understand. They called it a racist thing, but it was really something that traces through Robert Anton Wilson and Discordianism, this kind of god of chaos. Keck is the Egyptian god of chaos.
Right, and that's the one thing about the Necronomicon and these chaos magicians, as I would call them, is that or Peter Levenda, is that it's such a stew of all these different
ideas and symbols.
Yes.
They actually have their own religion, I would say. Illumination or the Illuminati, not in a specific group sense.
But Robert Anton Wilson,
ideas, they have their own ideas.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
they admire Crowley, they admire certain people
right.
in history.
Even
but
James
they all
Joyce.
branch back through Crowley, almost.
Yeah, have you ever read Robert Anton Wilson's Illuminatus trilogy? Yes. I mean, try to make sense of that book. You can't, and that's the point, I think. But you're right.
Well, he has references that are very telling in there. He's got all kinds of occult symbols, but at the end, they go to Ingolstadt, where the foundation of the Illuminati is, right?
That's right.
And so it has this kind of mythical quality, but there are actual facts that can be tied into real-world history.
Which is more confusing, right? It makes it more confusing. And I think if you read Aleister Crowley, or Crowley, whatever, I'm sick of it, but it doesn't matter. But I think Rasmus put it this way. He said something like, you don't know if he's an unreliable narrator, so you don't know if he's lying or not. So it's like, it's like.
Well, that's true. That's a good point about Anton Wilson.
Well, in Crowley too, and in Anton Wilson.
Well, why do you say he's unreliable? I think he's actually blinded a lot of stuff and put symbols in there. But I think that once you kind of decode Crowley and know what he's really saying, there's a couple phrases in his whole corpus that I think expose him. Out of the one where he talks about, I wanted to be the right-hand man of Satan.
Right.
I don't know why, but that's what I wanted. I think that was it. I think there were statements where he's very anti-Christian.
Oh,
I wanted to destroy Christianity. I think that's an important aspect of him.
Mm-hmm.
And the one where he says, Iwas is Satan, the fallen angel, this part of the stars, So I think that's where you kind of decode when you read him talk the first time where he's talking about Awas. Well, once you realize that Awas is the Lord of the air, he's making statements that refer right back to the Christian, understanding of demons.
Right. No, that's true. And that brings me to something about, if you notice about these occultists, they almost have to make their mark by being anti-Christian. Like, they could be just as easily or easier, be anti-Muslim, they could be Judaism, they could be anti, pick your religion, but they always have to, like, at the very beginning, like, say, hey, the Catholic Church or the Christians are stupid, Christ didn't exist, any of this, right? And so it's almost...
Christ was just an amalgam of all kinds of these gods.
Yeah, the zeitgeist thing.
It's the same story in ancient Egypt,
Right. Where it's completely foolish, and I think we're living, William, and it's sad to say, but I mean, there are some people that give me hope, but it's such a biblically illiterate society that we live in. So people don't really understand even the message, even from a literary perspective, of what the Bible is claiming.
It's not reading culture anymore. It's the unfortunate truth. It's a visual culture. People think they are fully informed by watching a video.
That's right.
And that's a huge deception, and you can see it played out. And people referencing documentaries as source. And when I was reading through, reading the whole West Memphis 3 thing, people would just say to me, I saw all 3 documents, I got a full understanding of the case. Yeah. And they're saying that with 100% certainty. They still say it to me, I watched those HBO documentaries, so they think that these biased documentaries are truth.
Right.
It's actually something that's happening in greater degree. You can talk to Making a Murderer. Mm-hmm. There's another one called 13, which talked about African Americans that were locked up in jails, but they conflate the African American, experience with jail populations, and they don't really explain that part of that isn't all African Americans. Some of them are Latinos and whites. Just the jail population has increased as well. Right. So they're actually kind of deception, and the same thing happened with the OJ documentary, where they put OJ within the context of the Rodney King riots and all this stuff, which is really not fair. I think it's totally disingenuous because a guy like OJ really, removed himself from the black community.
Oh, he totally did.
Yeah, he lived in Brentwood. He never really hung out with this black community. He wasn't like a black power type. He might have said that behind the scenes, but he was never politically active. No. And he survived off the largesse of his NFL career and the benefactors of USC. So,
right.
You see this agenda.
Kurt's rental car, too.
Say Michael Moore as well, where they're not talking about the facts. So people are truly kind of misinformed if they rely upon documentaries to get a gist of any subject. Really.
Absolutely, 100% agree. You always got to go to the source material. And that's why
consider the source of who's biased. Everybody's biased. So you've got to read everything and then go to who said what. I mean, what did Crowley actually write and say, not what somebody else said he said.
That's right.
What did he do and say? That's the really key. And that's the same thing with the West Memphis 3. What happened in time, in reality, and is it objective and fair information?
Right.
I mean, when you see that Damien Eccles' psych record comes from different people from Oregon, and it's consistent with what's said in Arkansas, and it's 500 pages of different experts who are saying this different stuff. It's hard to say that can be discounted as being biased or as somebody has an agenda. So anyway, that was
no, excellent. No, I think that's a really important point that people who are researching and trying, and I told my young, even though he's published 17 books. The age of 22, John Evans, who's the co-host of the show, I told him that being blind in this age is kind of a blessing, because he's not subject to the propaganda and the aesthetics, which is an aesthetic bombardment of, because, people, by their nature, make aesthetic judgments, and everything's based on the television and sort of conforming to that collective, and which I think is, I watch very few TV shows, and if I do, I make sure it's something worthwhile looking into. But it's I think a lot of people have, unfortunately, get subconscious ideas. Like you said, there's neurolinguistic programming in a lot of these shows, and that's the lifestyle and the argumentation, the things that go on, create Discordianism. And basically what that does to a society's spirit, I think, is just, traumatize them, basically, and leave them with a spiritual hunger. And where does that spiritual hunger go to but places like, Harry Potter? And then what's
Right.
the next step from Harry Potter? Oh, actually practicing witchcraft, and then or something like that. It opens the door to those things. And I think that we're
It's the
losing.
subject of Harry Potter, right? These kids are learning, right? So they're learning in school. So the reader himself envisions himself being trained and learning about all these subjects at the same time, right?
Right. And what's interesting about J.K. Rowling, isn't K the 11th letter in the alphabet?
And she invented she invented that middle name as K. It doesn't represent an actual name.
Right.
It's just her name is K.
Right, so there's some sort of So let's first.
There's numerology in Harry Potter. Harry Potter's wand is 11 letters, 11 inches long. So you've got the number of magic, and even his name is a representation of the magician, right? Which is 5 and 6, the microcosm and the macrocosm.
Oh, I never thought of that. Okay, yeah.
So that's intentional. You see this kind of. I just had this conversation with somebody today that there's an intelligent guiding hand behind her work, and there's a pretty decent argument people could make that she's like Shakespeare, where somebody used her as a front, kind of like Francis Bacon.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Versus Shakespeare is they used J.K. Rowling as a front to get this message across and to create change in society, kind of like people created that change with the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you can make that good argument because the whole journey of Harry Potter is an alchemical journey.
Yes.
He's moving from Negro to the gold or whatever it is. You know, so each book actually is an alchemical journey, which shows some of the depth of her understanding of, and they talk about the Philosopher's Stone.
Exactly.
The Sorcerer's Stone, right?
Yeah.
So they've got all this Western magical tradition in there. And I think in the first book there's a guy in there by the name of Flamel, who was a big-time alchemist of his age. So they're smart. It's very, very intelligent in that book.
Yeah, and then I say with any work of literature, the names and the objects alluded to come first. So when I'm looking at Harry Potter,
he is Hermes.
Right.
Well, the version of Hermes.
And then you have Lupin, which is basically lupus and werewolf type of things, and you have a Hand of Glory, which is a very you have a Hand of Glory actually. And
where is that? Is that
in the Harry Potter books? Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
That in what is it?
The Mickey Rourke movie.
Mickey Rourke movie. What is that? Angel Heart.
Angel Heart. Yeah, it's great. That was actually really great movie right there.
There's a 93 in that movie too.
Is there really? That's right.
Go watch I just uploaded Occult Hollywood onto my YouTube channel. I made
great.
it 6 years ago, and just put it on in the background. You might find it interesting.
Oh, definitely. I'll have to definitely check that out.
It's really crappily. It's probably the lowest produced movie you'll ever see. But I kind of put in just so many 11s. There was one in what was that movie about mind control?
Butterfly Effect.
What is it?
Butterfly Effect.
No, it was the guy who does a political assassination with Angela Lansbury.
Manchurian Candidate.
Manchurian Candidate, yeah.
Okay.
In the Manchurian Candidate, when he gets tricked, there's a guy at 11. They state an 11 in the background. Really amazing. So it's there intentionally.
Interesting.
But so all those, there's a lot. I was surprised to find that Oliver Stone knows about philemic numerology because he integrates those into his films.
Thank you for listening. That was me having a talk with Brandon Young of the Anti-Occult Podcast. The remainder of our discussion can be found at the Anti-Occult Podcast YouTube channel. Look for the name Brandon Young. Thank you and have a great night.